Underneath Wilson, first down Jets.
The Aaron Rodgers New York Jets experiment has been a bigger disaster than the final season of Happy Days. And if both parties actually use their minds, then they'll happily agree to a divorce once the 2025 league year begins. If Rodgers and the Jets do split up, well, there's going to be no shortage of logical landing spots. But there's also a handful of teams that would be just as bad a bit for him as the Jets. So with that, how about we dive into 5 teams that Aaron Rodgers should go to and 5 that he should avoid at all costs.
Their side with the ball. 3rd down and 16. As Carr throws.
Go to Pittsburgh Steelers. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields have provided above-average quarterback play for the Steelers in 2024. It hasn't been all-world by any means, but certainly better than whatever they had under center from 2019 to 2023. But the Steelers would greatly bolster their chances of a Super Bowl if they added a player like Rodgers to the mix. Keep in mind, both Wilson and Fields are on expiring contracts, and there's no guarantee that either will return in 2025. If a Wilson-Fields tandem can turn the Steelers into a top AFC team, just imagine what Rodgers could do behind center. He'd have George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, and Jalen Warren to headline a nice set of playmakers. Though we would like to think that they'd make a harder effort to retain pending free agent Najee Harris if Rodgers came aboard. Don't mind us suggesting that the Steelers would probably bring in Devontae Adams as well if they managed to get Rodgers. Do you really think that the Jets want the all-pro receiver if Rodgers isn't throwing them the ball? Of course not. Rodgers wouldn't have to play lights out either, now with the Steelers fielding a top 5 defense led by TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Joey Porter Jr. Add it all up, and Pittsburgh feels like the ideal landing spot for the final act of Aaron Rodgers' career. Avoid New York Giants. The idea of Rodgers staying in New York to play for the NFC rival Giants is a great idea if you're drawing up a comedy show on Broadway. It's rather obvious that a big personality and superstar like Rodgers just is not cut out for the shiny bright spotlights in New York. It has just been a marketing and PR disaster for the Jets. So why would it end any differently if he went to the Giants? Also, the Giants are among the most poorly constructed teams in all of football. They have a rising star wideout in Malik Neighbors and a decent number 2 in Wan'Dale Robinson. They have an atrocious offensive line, a mediocre rushing game, and a below-average defense. And it's not like the Giants are close to catching up with the Philadelphia Eagles or Washington Commanders in the NFC East. A healthy Dak Prescott makes the Dallas Cowboys competitive enough to keep the Giants in the division basement too. So we would kindly advise Rodgers to ignore any phone calls coming from the Giants if they try to recruit him. Not that he really needs a reminder. Go to Seattle Seahawks. This entry may seem completely random at first glance, but it actually makes perfect sense if you look at the big picture. Geno Smith has not been able to repeat the success from his superb 2022 Comeback Player of the Year season. He's turning the ball over at an alarming rate this year, not to mention that the Seahawks would save $25 million against the cap if they were to cut or trade Smith next offseason. If Rodgers wants to play for his Super Bowl contender next season, the Seahawks may be his best choice. He joined a star-studded offensive nucleus led by the 3-headed monster at wide receiver and DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Tyler Lockett, and of course running back Kenneth Walker III. Mike McDonald's defense hasn't made the jump that we had hoped, but hey, there's still a lot of talent to like there with Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen, Julian Love, Derek Hall, and Leonard Williams. Surely, improvement is inevitable for 2025. The NFC West division is also weaker than expected, but adding Rodgers would make Seattle the overwhelming favorites to win the crown in 2025. And who wouldn't want to see them duke it out with the San Francisco 49ers twice a year? Main thing holding Seattle back from title contention is consistency at QB. While Smith keeps throwing careless interceptions, this Rodgers guy holds the best TD to INT ratio in NFL history. Oh, did we mention that he'd also be throwing to the likes of Metcalf and JSN? Oh yeah, please sign us up for Rodgers to finish out his career in Emerald City. Avoid New Orleans Saints. New Orleans would have to pull off some creative cap gymnastics to make a Derek Carr for Aaron Rodgers swap work. But you do wonder if the Jets would be open to it, keeping in mind that they pursued Carr before he signed with New Orleans in 2023 free agency. In this scenario, Carr would merely be a bridge QB for the Jets while they look for their long-term answer. But at any rate, if Rodgers becomes available, he's going to need to ignore New Orleans completely, pure and simple. Since they just refuse to rebuild, the Saints could easily get caught up in the excitement of Rodgers. We could see a scenario where they meet his price demands, let him handpick their next head coach, and recruit a bunch of former teammates to New Orleans. And we say no thank you to all of that. If Rodgers goes to New Orleans, he's signing up to finish his career on a non-playoff team. They have one of the worst offensive lines in football. Their once elite defense has regressed to a level of mediocrity. Their best wide receiver, Chris Olave, is now an injury concern. The Saints don't give Rodgers any path to truly competing for a Super Bowl. They would be exactly where they are right now, the third best team in the NFC South. Just don't go there, Rodgers. And New Orleans, for the love of all Saints fans, please, just begin your rebuild already, for crying out loud. Go to Indianapolis Colts. Think the Colts miss Andrew Luck? Ever since his retirement, they've tried everything at quarterback. Jacoby Brissett, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, Anthony Richardson, Gardner Minshew II, Joe Flacco, Richardson again, Little Mo with the gimpy leg. Hey, and newsflash, the Colts still don't have their long-term answer behind center. And seeing how the franchise has treated Richardson in a sophomore season, it's not a stretch to think that they'll look to move on in the offseason. If that decision is made, we would love the idea of the Colts making a run at Aaron Rodgers. And he should have some interest in coming on board. The Colts have one of the best offensive lines in football this year. If the Jets unit was half as good as Indy's group, Rodgers' decent 2024 stat line would look a whole lot better. They have a top 5 running back in Jonathan Taylor and a deep wide receiver core headlined by Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, and Alec Pierce. But Rodgers behind center, and boom, those three could easily put up career numbers. Oh, and of course, Indy would be playing in a hapless NFC South. The Tennessee Titans and Jacksonville Jaguars aren't going anywhere, and the Houston Texans' sluggish second half play this year suggests that they aren't the contender that we thought they'd be. And if Indianapolis brought in Rodgers, nobody said that they can't add even more star power to that offense. Heck, they could probably get Devontae Adams from the Jets for pennies on the dollar. Just saying. Avoid Carolina Panthers. Unless Panthers owner David Tepper offers Aaron Rodgers the type of money that Dr. Evil from Austin Powers sought, somewhere upward of $100 billion, then why on earth would the future Hall of Famer want to come to Carolina? The Panthers have become a graveyard for quarterbacks. Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Darnold, 2021 Cam Newton, Baker Mayfield, and now Bryce Young. Even if Tepper offers Rodgers a future stake in Panthers ownership after his career, he has got to say thanks, but no thanks, and run. They already traded their best wide receiver, Deontay Johnson. Chuba Hubbard is a stud in the backfield, sure, but who's Rodgers going to throw to? The unproven Xavier Legette? A 35-year-old Adam Thielen? There is just nothing appealing about this franchise that is devoid of game-changing talents. Look at how Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, and Brian Burns have flourished since leaving Carolina. Go to Los Angeles Rams. All right, hear us out for a moment. We know. The Rams have Matthew Stafford's hefty contract on the books. But the Super Bowl 56 champion has battled a rash of injuries and is nothing close to a top 10 quarterback anymore. Stafford can still play at an above-average level, but it's obvious the Rams aren't anywhere close to contending with the top dogs in the NFC. They need a better quarterback to compete with the likes of Detroit, Philadelphia, Minnesota, and Green Bay. If the Rams could find a taker for Stafford's contract, GM Les Snead should be all in on a pursuit for Aaron Rodgers. Imagine the 4-time league MVP slinging it to Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, with Kyren Williams leading the backfield. Sean McVay is one of the greatest offensive-minded coaches the game has ever seen. You don't think he wouldn't be able to rejuvenate Rodgers at the end of his career? Of course he can. This might be a bit of a long shot, but hey, if the Rams can pull the necessary strings to make it work, they need to seriously plan a Rodgers for Stafford swap. Avoid Las Vegas Raiders. You may recall that back in the 2021 offseason, Rodgers sought a trade from the Green Bay Packers after growing fed up with management. The Denver Broncos, San Francisco 49ers, and Las Vegas Raiders were said to be on his wish list. Rodgers would have made sense if the Raiders still had Devontae Adams, and if they weren't such a lousy football team. Last year's group that finished 8-9 and boasted a top 10 defense, that would have been the perfect fit for Rodgers. But Antonio Pierce's second season in charge of the Raiders has been, well, disastrous. Their defense is atrocious. The O-line leaves a lot to be desired. Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers are a prolific receiving duo, but not like the star-studded group Rodgers has failed with in New York. Owner Mark Davis will surely go big game hunting this offseason to save his franchise. Having Tom Brady as a minority owner means that the Raiders have a secret weapon of a recruiter too. But Rodgers has to avoid all those temptations and stay away from Vegas. It'd be a total shame to see this mediocre franchise ruin the final year or two of his career. Go to Minnesota Vikings. Rodgers, he's got the chance to do the funniest thing ever. Like Brett Favre, Rodgers spent over a decade and a half with the Packers before getting traded to the Jets. Favre then landed with the Vikings after a disappointing one-year stint in New York. Could Rodgers follow the footsteps of the man that he succeeded? Alright, here's the case for it. Sam Darnold is having a career year, but will surely chase the money from another QB-needy team in free agency. 2024 first-round pick J.J. McCarthy is still their guy long-term, but McCarthy missed the entire rookie year recovering from knee surgery. It doesn't at all hurt McCarthy to learn behind Rodgers for a year or two before taking over the starting duties, especially if Minnie doesn't think the Michigan product is quite ready for primetime. Rodgers would join a Vikings team with a star-studded supporting cast: Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, and old friend Aaron Jones. Not to mention, Minnesota has a top 10 defense and a rock-solid offensive line that has helped Darnold enjoy a career year. And of course, there's the whole Packers-Vikings rivalry thing. I mean, come on, imagine if Rodgers pulled it far by playing for the Vikings at the tail end of his career. That right there is drama, baby. But in terms of competing for a championship, the Vikings are the perfect landing spot for Rodgers, especially seeing that he has probably no more than like 2 seasons left in him. Avoid Cleveland Browns. Jameis Winston has followed the footsteps of Jacoby Brissett and Joe Flacco in Cleveland. That is, he has completely outplayed Deshaun Watson and shown yet again that the $230 million man has been the problem the entire time. The Browns have to cut their losses and just release Watson or pay him to be on the bench next year. Clearly, Kevin Stefanski is not the problem if the Browns' offense is functioning with second-string QBs. But this doesn't at all mean that Rodgers should be itching to play with the Browns. They still lack a number 1 receiver after trading Amari Cooper. Star running back Nick Chubb is a pending free agent, and Jim Schwartz's usually stingy defense has taken a giant step back. Plus, does Rodgers really think that he can compete in an AFC featuring the Steelers, Baltimore Ravens, and Cincinnati Bengals? There is just no path to a Super Bowl if he joins Cleveland. But hey, which other NFL teams should be on Aaron Rodgers' wish list, and which ones should he avoid entirely? Let us know in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, then clicking the like button helps out a ton, and we really appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, then subscribing is a great idea, because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.